So now it's time for me to welcome next speaker, Susan Zielinsky. You are the managing director of SMART, an organization that works to promote sustainable urban mobility at the University of Michigan. You also spent about a year at Harvard working with new mobility, innovation and leadership. You have worked more than 15 years, I've learned, as a city planner in the city of Toronto. And also, and this is interesting for us, you've been a member of the King of Sweden's jury in the Stockholm Partnership for Sustainable Cities, right? So, and here you're going to talk about mobility as a service and mobility from an international perspective. So please welcome Susan Zielinsky.
Well, it's a great honor to be here, and really inspiring, I have to say, and especially I've just come from India, so it's a very different set of things going on here than there. And Eric asked me to talk about transforming transportation globally, which is, you know, a small topic, but nevertheless, we still have very little time, so I should probably get going. And what I decided to do was a little bit of a Pecha version, or a kind of a snapshot of all the main points, or the kind of main themes that I'm going to talk about. And it's sort of like getting into my inner mind, which I hope is not too frightening. And I'll draw upon quotes from some unlikely people and leaders, past and present, to help us move forward through. So, first thing, is there anybody who doesn't think that transportation is at a tipping point? Excellent. Okay, so we can go forward. Uh-oh, I've already. So yeah, so we're at such a tipping point with so many different things. We heard about complex systems, which means we have to move towards new integration models, which we are. This is globally, I'm talking globally, generally. And of course, we're helped by all of these new technologies, which don't have to convince anybody in this room. But what I do want to really emphasize is that technology is not the machines. Technology is the way we do things. So it can be a fork or a prayer, and also that we decide. We're the deciders about how we want to live. And the technologies we create are ones that we decide. And technology is not running what we do, quite the opposite. Also, we're at a new pace. Change is changing faster. We know that the Moore's Law says that things are going really quickly, which is really exciting, because this means that in a context where technology is basically outpacing policy, it means that we have to be much more creative about the new business models and the new policy models that we have to use to approach this really complex challenge, and also this complex opportunity. So the fact that we don't know what we don't know says, in that case, what we have to do is we have to have all these ecosystems. We have to get to know each other. We have to talk to each other, even across sectors. Can you imagine if you're in government and having to talk to business people and entrepreneurs and civil society? But yes, we've already heard that that's absolutely essential. So on that note, we talk about the kinds of new skills for the new mobility in the smart cities. And I think we often think STEM, we think science and technology and all of that. But I think part of it is, a big, huge part of it actually, is how do we actually talk to each other better? How do we understand each other's languages? How do we make things, move things forward together? And of course, there are new kinds of implementation models too. So related to all of this, I think one of the most exciting developments lately is that people are starting to say, we don't really need so much to know about what the trends are and what's going to happen. We just want to actually try stuff. We want to put it on the ground. We want to get together and pilot it. So that's been an exciting thing in terms of, seize the day and fail fast and come around and learn more. Oops, was that failing fast, maybe? Then also, variety is the spice of life. Europe is a little different from the US, and that's very different from the emerging economies in the whole globe. But that is, I think, probably an exciting part of what we're facing as opposed to a challenge. And finally, this one I think is one of the most important ones. And I know this is all pretty philosophical. It doesn't sound like sort of transportation, but really it kind of needs to underlie how we move forward. So there's a guy named James Carse who's a philosopher, and he says there are two kinds of games. One is a finite game, and the object of a finite game is to win or finish the play. The object of an infinite game is to continue the play. And I think that's what we're all about here. It's to say, are we doing one official plan and then we do it and then we're done and we can go have a beer? Or is this something that we're setting up our ecosystems, we're setting up our infrastructure, we're setting up our resiliencies so that we can respond together to everything that occurs, whether it's a challenge or an opportunity. So just a quick context, I work at SMART, as mentioned, and with a wonderful global ecosystem, and we work to advance implementation of sustainable mobility systems and the industry and enterprise that supplies it. And we're catalysts, so we tend to work on platforms and tools to advance new mobility, and the kind of research we do is very much action-oriented. It's about moving new solutions forward, and where it's very much responding to what's actually happening on the ground. So we work all around the world to develop methodologies and tools to help things go forward. I'm gonna, that was the snapshot. Do you want to hear more?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so what are the new contexts? I think you might see here some proof of the tipping point. Not that you need it, because we all think it is a tipping point. But we have something called the MOBI platform, and we have a MOBI prize for new mobility enterprises that are actually on the ground businesses that are have economic opportunity and support sustainable transportation. And these are from all over the world. So what we do with the MOBI platform is to, first of all, honor those businesses, and then we connect them with each other, we connect them with investors, we connect them with city buyers, we connect them, and then we support them. So you can see it's modes, services, products, technologies, designs, infrastructure. If you're interested, if you wanted a prize for Sweden, that would be possible for us to add a prize. We gave the first one out at Rio Plus 20, and the last one was at ITS World Congress in Detroit, and the next one's going to be in India. So the kinds of things that are happening are responding to the many challenges of congestion, climate change, and all this, but they're also responding to the new opportunities and new cultural shifts of the millennials thinking, oh, maybe I don't need to own anything. And what we've got here is a monoculture. We're still dealing with the fact that in Detroit it's a car monoculture, in some places it's a feet monoculture, in some places it's multimodal, which is supposed to be good, but not necessarily in India is it working well. So we are searching for these kind of integration opportunities, and the direction that we're taking is that transportation is flat, that it's not one thing and all the rest is alternative. To me, that is saying alternative transportation is like saying women are alternative men. And if you want a technology, I guess, parallel, the whole interoperable information system of laptop, desktop, printer, camera, that's how transportation's evolving, as we all know here. So what I'm going to show you is that what we've, hang on, the video.
Yep.
Oh, I see, sorry. So this, I don't know if anyone's seen this, but Veolia did it to visualize. It's just a 3-minute video on visualizing all the things that are already in existence today but combined into sort of an integrated day in the life of new mobility or mobility as a service. I've been working in new mobility since it was before it was called MOS, but it's the same kind of, it's the same principle. So what we have here is this seamless, multimodal, IT-enabled, door-to-door, sustainable, equitable transportation system. And there are some problems with it in terms of there are no bicycles in here, and no boats, and no auto rickshaws, and you know, a few things missing, but I think it really gives the sense of how we can sort of work seamlessly forward and what we can envision. And I don't think I've ever even seen a depicted real-life version of going as a day in the life that can tell the story as well as this. We see the role of technology, but we also see the role of physical planning and the connectivity there. And because of time, I think I'm going to turn it off. You should. I'll give you the link, and you can have my my PowerPoint. But you can see how this brings in all the different modes.
Where is it? Where is it? There it is.
So yeah, so you can see the visualization, but then when it comes to implementation, you've often got four solitudes. So you've got the technology people that don't talk to the CEOs, that don't talk to the NGOs, and it kind of goes like that. And the user ends up, you know, losing out in the end. And has anyone ever had a frustrating transportation-related meeting? So this is my experience. Usually you get there and you talk about the problem for most of the meeting, and then someone says, oh, we were supposed to come up with solutions, and then it's like a laundry list thing of everybody brainstorming, okay, we could do this and that, and then it's sort of like, well, I'm the voice of reason and I think we should prioritize. But as we're going with kind of whole systems, it's not so much about prioritizing it. It's sort of, to me, that's sort of like the great maker or God or whoever you think of as the creator saying, do you want a hard... they have like a vast profusion of modes of transportation, but don't know how to kind of pull them together. So we worked with them, and then we were invited to we were invited to South Africa and then Brazil, and we began to see patterns. And what evolved there was that, first of all, not everybody knows each other or talks to each other. Second of all, they never actually see... None of the leaders of transportation actually see all of the modes together at the same time. And so what we ended up doing was, first of all, starting by bringing the leaders from the different sectors together and saying, what do you love about what you have? Which is also kind of short circuits people because they're used to thinking about challenges. And once we put all the things that exist and overlay them, and we put a red dot where two or more things already connect. And this reveals the new mobility grid. And you can suddenly see the possibilities of a user, you know, a person going from, you know, the bicycle seamlessly onto the bus, getting onto the train, the auto rickshaw, and it all appears as a whole system. So this was actually quite transformational. We've done this now in 20 cities worldwide, large cities, Washington, Beijing, Rio, pretty much every continent. And similar things happen. They haven't seen this whole thing. They get very inspired. You instantly can see very short-term things that can be done, and then you can see long-term needs. You know, here's a whole area where there's no connectivity, but there are lots of people. Here's another area where there's lots of transportation, but there's no development there. So there's really exciting possibilities, and it immediately identifies solutions. So then that it's like it's a MOS related thing. So how are we doing? Okay, yeah. And in each case, it always identifies very different things. So it's extremely customized. It's based completely on the needs of that particular region. So here are some images from that process. Lots of different places. Lots of smiles. That's the other thing, it's very positive. And what we relate to that is some design prototypes. So, you know, as Molly had said, you can't forget the physical design when you're looking at all the smart stuff. And there were so many unanticipated benefits doing something that started out just as a taking of an inventory, having people around the table. We've done it with up to about 80 people in tables of 8. And they have, you know, post-it notes and stars. It's like a charrette, and it gets real excitement, and it begins to develop the ecosystem, and it introduces people to each other that have never met that should be working together. And then what happens is you find that you don't have as much conflict as you expected, and you can kind of zero in on the things that are going to be challenging, but many things you can get over. And it's not about a big master plan. It's very much about doing a number of different things right away. So also something surprising was that the US military found this to be contributing to resilience because it's supporting more choices that are more connected. We also have ways of assessing accessibility versus mobility. How can people meet their needs as opposed to how far and how fast they can go. And of course, you already know about the technology and the advances that that's made to all that I've been talking about so far, and that the pace is going. In terms of new business models, I think it's really easy. The big standouts are shared use, big data, automation, and mobility as a service. But I think mobility as a service is the one that's the real paradigm shift, because it's not tweaking a car. It's not just shifting something a little bit. It's really moving from mode to system and mode to service. And even major companies, for the past 10 years, SMART has been supported by Ford Motor Company, and we've been helping them on, you may have seen their journey working towards thinking of themselves as a mobility solutions company as opposed to a car company. So this has been exciting that they've been doing experiments all around the world in things like MOS and things like, you know, bicycle transportation, a whole range of different non-single occupancy vehicle, even goods movement. So there are many things that an automotive company can do that are beyond just making cars. And the other thing is that there's not just about the big company economic benefit, but there's also cost savings, economic regional competitiveness, and job creation that has to do with this. So the other thing is that there's a huge role for government in advancing new business models as well as new policy models. One of our MOBI prizes went to Sao Paulo for opening their data and enabling new mobility innovation. And it went to Scotland for actually having a national program to advance new mobility industry, which is very similar to what's happening here in Sweden, what's happening in Finland, and a whole range of countries now suddenly. And at SMART, we have a MOS deployment consortium that has members from Finland, Michigan, Scotland, Sweden, and Austria, and we do know that Michigan is not a country. And lots of new roles for public sector, but in general, it's that it's about enabling, and it's about not necessarily having to run the systems, and it's about public-private innovation. It's about creating frameworks for the local regions to be able to do their best with what they have. It's not so much about rules and regulations. We don't have the time to be able to make the policies that are going to be in such detail. So this is about creating those ecosystems and government really supporting and removing barriers to innovation. New roles for startups, changing the game, filling the gaps. Streamlining, replicating, and scaling. This is a MOBI Prize winner with the head of the state of Rio. And just reminding ourselves that we're all the deciders. I remember I was walking down the street once with a friend of mine who said, wasn't it amazing how many things that Philip K. Dick predicted? And Philip K. Dick is the guy who wrote the book that Blade Runner was based on. And Blade Runner is kind of dystopic. And when I heard that, I thought, wait a minute, it wasn't so much that he actually predicted, it was that he created. And the more that those stories are told, the more that they become reality in the minds of everyone. So again, we're all the deciders. technology is not taking over. We can decide together how we want to live, and then create all the wonderful innovations and conditions that will have us have a better life through new mobility. And of course, we need the new skills. And I just wanted to finish off. Hey, that worked out really well. I'm so surprised. Well, almost done, really. Eric asked me to talk a little bit about the differences between Europe and the US and sort of global. And that's a really long conversation, but it's really exciting to see the differences, because every different country, they say, oh, you're so lucky, we don't have, we don't, in India you have all these policies that are in place and everything, but in India they don't have policies in the way, and they don't have lobbyists that get in the way of doing some really cool things, and they have so much freedom to do things. On the other hand, they say, oh, we have so much corruption. It's just like, oh yeah, we don't have any corruption in the United States, So but it's a different kind. And I think what we have here is that, for example, in the US, if someone from Europe says, oh, well, that's easy to solve. You just need a policy, you need to throw some money at it, and you need to have good leadership. But when you're working in India, which is where we first started actually trying to implement this stuff, we had to think, oh, this is a really good mental exercise. How do we do things in the absence of good land use, good leadership, good policy, and good funding? But that says, then we have to be more creative, and we have to work together better. So, just back to the infinite game. I look forward to connecting with you at the end of the day on how we might collaborate if you're interested on the infinite game.
Thank you very much, Susan.